Today's class is one that has been a long time coming. In fact, this is the first proper class that we are recording since I took summer break in 2021 there. And this is the class that is focused on the low-res creation. Now, part of why this class was such a long time coming is because there is actually quite a lot to go through. You see, when I was organizing the topics for this particular class, I realized that there's really two different approaches that I can take to the question of how do we create a low res and how do we just analyze that? How do we put together a class that's going to be compelling there for all of you? And there is either the approach of covering literally everything, or rather, there is the approach of just giving you all a few little tips and tricks as to how to create a proper low res. Okay, so do triangles matter? Are they important? What about edge loops? Just covering a few of these questions relatively quickly, which would actually make for a pretty good YouTube video if we did something like that. Or at least like a small capsule that people can digest very easily there. But this is our gang. And so it was important for me that we really take the time to really dissect this kind of topic there. And so that second approach of really dissecting the topic of low-res made me realize just how incredibly deep this rabbit hole actually goes. And I've been kind of dreading a little bit getting my hands dirty with this particular topic because although on the surface, the topic of how to create a low-res, you could think about it like, okay, so maybe I can just give you all a few tips and tricks as to how to create a low-res and then show you a few retopology tools and then let's just move on from there, But really, there's actually so much that goes within creating a proper low-res that you have to know if you've never learned these things before. So things like, let's say, we're going to talk about things like, let's say, smoothing. We're going to talk about things like soft edges, hard edges. We're going to talk about things like tangent basis, what that is. We're going to talk about what is a normal map. Now we all know a normal map is like a texture that has like these violet, blue, green, and red colors in there, but really there's so much more to understand there to really know what truly is a normal map and what is the very precise interaction of a normal map with a low res there. It's very, very important to understand that because there are some changes that we can do to a low res, let's say after we have created it and after we have baked it, and then there are changes that we cannot do after we have finished a low res and we have baked out a normal map for it. And it's good to know what kind of changes we can and cannot make and why we can and cannot make these changes so that when we are confronted in the future in a situation where we may have to do a change to a low res after it's been baked, we know whether that's a valid change or if we can just do the change and move on, or if we should consider rebaking. Things like mesh triangulation is also a very interesting one. Not just triangles, but triangulation per se. All of the quads that we have, they're all on a particular mesh. Well, they're all the combination of two triangles that are stuck together. There's a separation there between those two triangles, so we call the diagonal, and that diagonal can be in, if you consider a square, you can have a diagonal like this or a diagonal like that, and we don't necessarily often think of controlling in which orientation we want that diagonal to be, but in certain cases, that question is actually very, very important. And so I also want to talk about that, So there's all these different topics, and we haven't even talked yet about how to make a proper low res for, let's say, a head versus a hinge joint versus a ball joint versus just general tips on how to make a low res for, let's say, something that will be simulated using cloth there. And so already there, I've already kind of mentioned quite a lot of topics where there's a lot of subtleties around those that are very important that we really take time to really talk very deeply so that we really understand what's really going on there. And yet there's a lot more I haven't even mentioned yet. So this particular class, or at this point, it's probably almost a segment, if you will, talking about low res will really go very, very deep in a lot of different things. We're going to talk a lot about UVs as well in the context of a low res. And there's a lot of knowledge that we have to go through before we can even talk about the tools per se that we're going to use to make a low res. Now, of course, we will cover all the tools to make a proper low-res. We'll talk about retopology tools, these sorts of things, but that will come after the theoretical knowledge is out of the way, because I think it's really important to understand the theory, really understand things at a deep level before we really get our hands dirty with tools, so that we really have a pretty good idea of where we're trying to go with these tools. For that, for the retopology part, I am very happy to announce that I have partnered with Chaos Masons to get a few different high-res of different flavors, whether they're hard surface high-reses, organic high-reses, and so that we can have a very nice variety of different models for which we can talk about how do we go about creating a proper low-res for these different flavors of models you can encounter there. As you can imagine, perhaps making a low-res for, let's say, hard surface character is way more technical than it is for, let's say, something that is very organic, you know. So the more something is organic, usually the easier it is to do a low res for it, because we have access to procedural tools like Z-Remesher that can actually do a pretty good job in a lot of cases. And so when we do something organic, usually it's easier to do a low res for something like that than it is to do a low res for something that is, let's say, hard surface. So it's worth to talk about what are the differences there, what do we want to pay attention. And my goal really is to create a practical demonstration as to how to go about low resing a hard surface character, low resing an organic character, and we'll certainly also talk about how to low res, if you will, if I can use that as a verb at this point, how do we go about low resing a model on which we will have cloth simulation later on. There's quite a lot to talk about, as you can see there. And even on top of all that, okay, on top of all that, then I also want to talk about how can we use different tools to create low-res. And when I mean tools here, I mean different software packages. So at a minimum, we will go through how to create a low-res using both Maya and how to do, or rather at this point, I suppose I should say, retopology. So our tools that we will explore to do retopology will include ZBrush, will include Maya, and will include 3ds Max. For those two softwares there, I will give you an actual proper demonstration. It's not clear at this point in time whether we will do a full retopology of a full character in all cases there, but I will at least give you a demonstration that is long enough that you are able to simply use those tools afterward to create whatever it is that you want there. For me, the question that's always in suspense here is, what do we do for Blender? I know there's a ton of Blender users. It's very popular there. I want to serve you if you want to learn Blender, and I want to help you out there. It's not clear that I will necessarily do a Blender tutorial on how to do retopology, but I am open to consider it. So maybe some of you can convince me to really spend some time on that. I guess I'll think about it. I may also just get someone to teach that eventually, but I do want to produce Blender content for our gang, of course, but that may be something that may be a bit further off. We'll see what happens there. I don't want to make any promises yet, but I at least want you all to know that I am certainly thinking about it. But you know, the thing about Blender too, there's already so much tutorials out there on how to use it that to a certain extent I'm like, yeah, there's already so many people that already cover that, first of all. And second of all, you know, like the reason why I also often put a lot of emphasis on Maya is because that is still the most commonly used tool in the industry when it comes to a general package there, you know. Blender is more indie-based, it's more for people who like to learn because it's free, of course. Maya is more of a professional-grade tool that you will encounter within a video game studio there. So I think I am serving people properly by using Maya and by teaching Maya, certainly. But still, I know Blender is quite popular, and, you know, I want to be software agnostic as much as possible there. So I will certainly see what I can do for that in the future there. Okay, there is a lot to go through as far as low-res is concerned. In fact, it will probably take its own section on OutGang.studio. On YouTube, there will be a full playlist for sure dedicated just to that. It is an extremely deep topic that will take a long time to cover. I was even talking about for it to take about a month and a half maybe to cover completely. I'll be honest, I don't actually know how much time it's going to take us to go through everything related to low-res creation, because there really is a lot to talk about. But this is the first class, the first topic, if you will, that we are recording videos on that is now completely offline. So we used to record these classes, of course, with an audience. Now, the time slot that we used to use for that is now reserved for giving all of you feedback on Sundays at noon Eastern time on Discord. So now that the classes are now offline, recorded offline, it does give me some flexibility in potentially producing more throughout 1 week, let's say, than simply one major class. I will certainly, you'll see that I'll be experimenting quite a lot, okay, with the format for this particular low-res creation block. I will be experimenting with having shorter videos that are perhaps released more frequently. We'll see how all of that goes. You know, I'm kind of thinking through all of that and trying to really figure out what is the best approach there to create all the content that we have to go through for this particular topic there. So you'll see a lot of experimentation there. The schedule will be very hectic, but as much as possible, you can expect as much as possible. Now, it's hard for me to really promise these things, especially with a topic that is this one that I've been kind of dreading to get my hands dirty with. But as much as possible, my goal would actually be to be releasing content, shorter content, but content more frequently than once per week, or at this point, once every 2 weeks, since last time that we recorded the class there. So we'll see how it goes, but keep an eye out, of course, everywhere. Every time something is released, of course, I will be posting it. I will be announcing it on Discord. You'll be able to see the update on the website. Of course, any content that makes it to YouTube will obviously be there too. So if you just keep an eye out on the different channels every few days or so, you'll, I'm sure, be able to really keep track of all the new content that gets released, and certainly as far as this particular topic is concerned. Anyway, so that's it. Let's start then our first capsule on the topic of low-res, where we'll cover the whole theory of low-res creation. Is really just to go through all these kind of more basic definitions there. Let's look at them in practice. Let's look at a few low-reses together. Let's just evaluate them. Let's just talk about them. Let's try to see if we can make sense of the topology a little bit there. And then once we're done with that, then we will move on to talk about deformation afterward. See you in the next video.